These are overpowered conferences in College Football 26 Dynasty. Earlier this week, we did the superpower conferences, and this is essentially part 2 to that video. What we did, we put all the best teams into the Pac-12 as you see them now. Basically the 4, 4.5 star, and 5-star teams. Really the teams that dominate season in and season out, winning playoff games as well as national championships in the sims that we do. So we've got them all here in the Pac-12. The only 4-star team that doesn't get in is Washington. Last time it was Florida State. We swapped them out for Washington this time because both of those teams are good, but they don't really make runs each and every season. It's kind of more rare that they do it for a particular dynasty. And the last one, we just kind of kept the other teams in the conferences that they were already in. But in this one, we've kind of tiered the conferences by how well they do in the dynasties that we see so that we can kind of get some new teams into the playoff every season. We thought about putting all these teams into the independent sphere, talked about that, but I think that it makes more sense to kind of keep them all in one spot so they have to play each other, and then make sure that we have other teams that actually get in with the automatic qualifiers, because it can kind of be weird with the rankings anyway. So first thing we did is we put kind of all the second tier teams that we've been seeing with this new roster update, which we got a new update today. I don't know exactly what the update was about, but with the new roster update that we had in the beginning of January, these are the teams that have really been doing very well. So Duke, Pitt, UCLA, those are all teams that have been doing well before that. But Arizona State has been a team that's really risen up. Louisville's been a team that's really risen up. Nebraska from time to time. Utah has really risen up. Virginia Tech actually doesn't need to be in here. Virginia Tech actually is going to go to this one. But Missouri has been a team that's made some runs. Iowa State, Oklahoma State, SMU, basically teams that will get into the playoffs pretty regularly in our sims. Even if they don't make runs to the end, they get in the playoffs pretty regularly. So we wanted to put them all in the ACC and see who's going to make it out of that conference every season, and see if one of these teams can actually make a run to win a championship. Duke and Pitt can make those runs, but teams like Arizona State, Louisville, Iowa State, Utah, those are teams that get to the playoffs pretty regularly. Even SMU get to the playoffs pretty regularly, but don't actually make runs at the end. Then we kind of started to put teams kind of in like other tiers. So the SEC, this is teams that we've seen make the playoffs, but don't really do anything in the playoffs, or they make the top 25 most seasons, but don't actually make a run, really regardless of the change that we made. There's some teams that aren't really like that, like Kentucky actually can probably come out of here and go into this conference. But yeah, these are teams that we've seen make runs when we've changed things around a little bit, or we've seen them kind of be in the top 25 pretty regularly. The best teams in here, I would say, are probably like Stanford, depending on how you move things around. North Carolina, depending on how you move things around, could be a top 10 team. Maryland, we've seen kind of moving up towards the top. But these teams really need special treatment to actually end up winning something, so we're putting those in the SEC. Then we've got our kind of final tier of power conference teams, true power conference teams, which is the Big Ten. These are power conference teams that we don't really ever see do anything. Very rarely. We've seen Rutgers, if we make like a super special conference for them, kind of get some wins, but even then they don't really end up making the playoff. Minnesota's never up there. Northwestern's never up there. None of these teams. Kansas, we've seen up there very rarely. If we have super, super special conditions, but I don't think we've seen them make the playoffs even in a long time, if ever. So those are what these teams are. Boston College probably should go into this one, because they can end up making runs, but the rest of these teams never make a run. So we'll see if we can get one of these teams to actually make the playoff out of that. These are kind of mid-tier teams. These are teams that are maybe newer power conference teams. I think Syracuse actually goes over here, and then UConn would go over here. So these are kind of either newer power conference teams in Cincinnati or UCF's case that don't really ever do anything, or they're G5 teams that we see actually make moves pretty regularly. So UNLV, pretty common to be in the college football playoff in the first season, sometimes even the second season of a sim. Memphis, Boise State, UAB, they're all pretty common teams to be up there. San Diego State as well. And then West Virginia, we're going to keep in here because they give a little bit more boost to this conference so they can get kind of maybe non-AQ spots. We wanted to kind of spread around the other teams that we do see make it sometimes, don't really make a run. So Tulane, North Texas are the teams that we left in the American with kind of the rest of the American there. The Mountain West, we did make some moves. I kind of built this so that we could see if Oregon State or Washington State could make a run out of the Mountain West with some of the stronger teams out of there. And also, we see San Jose State very rarely get close, but I don't think we've seen them make it in a long time. Fresno State maybe could make it. So those are kind of the things that we're looking for with this one. The rest of the conferences we kind of kept the same, but we tiered out the Power 4 so that we could see some new teams making it into the playoff. So we're going to roll with Wisconsin because I got this Brewers hat on. We're going to do our regular 3 years, best team, best conference, all the things that we usually do. I have a very special video that will be coming out most likely tomorrow. It's taken a lot of work to get it done, but it'll be on my main channel as well as this channel as a collaboration, which is a tournament that I set up on my main channel, which is the NIT tournament that I set up, which is kind of like a secondary tournament for college football. So check out that video, which I'll put here and link at the end, or I'll put it in the description and link at the end, I guess. Check that out to see the structure of it, but we're going to actually sim through that using Play Now, and we'll see that. I'm going to try to do those kind of videos, not quite as grand as this one, but try to do those type of videos. I found a way to kind of get those done without making it take like 5 days. So I will do that. So make sure that you're ready for that one tomorrow, but make sure that you like and subscribe. We're over 480 subscribers. We've got 3 more days left this month to try to get to 500. Please subscribe to the channel and help us get to that 500 and hopefully get monetized by March if we can get to 1,000 subscribers. But other than that, we're going to sim to the first CFP poll. Not a great start. We are 2-7 at Wisconsin, which I don't know how surprising that is, but we do have some interesting things going on here. So Ohio State, we have a lot of teams from our Pac-12 conference, but we have some interesting teams in the top 5, or top 10, I should say. Louisville, 7-0 out of our ACC conference. That was one of the teams that I think is kind of be conference-proof unless you put them into the strongest conference like the Pac-12. But yeah, they're beating some of the best teams like Pitt. They've beaten Illinois, which is one of the better teams. They beat Iowa State early on, so this is a really good team. They have some tough games at the end there. SMU and Kentucky. Kentucky is interesting, but you do see Louisville's trip up with Kentucky a lot, even when they're not good. This time they're top 25, being a part of the... What were they? They were part of the SEC card. No, I even think I put them in the bottom tier. So Kentucky has performed well in there. Got a top 10 matchup if both teams can perform in the ACC with SMU at the end of the season. UNLV in the top 5, like I said, UNLV commonly in the playoff in the first season. They've already beat Boise State, and this is a massive game coming up here in, 2 weeks against Memphis, who is also a top 10 team, number 7. They also just beat Boise State on the road. Memphis is not as commonly up there. They're a good team, but they're not as commonly up there. This will be a very, very massive matchup. We could see both of these teams in the playoff, depending on how it goes. They probably will have another matchup later on in the conference championship game. More Pac-12 teams. South Carolina is one of our SEC teams, so not the second tier, but the third tier of teams, and they are, I think, the best team in the SEC right now. Yeah, they're the best team in the SEC right now as far as ranking, maybe not as far as in the conference, but they are up there in the playoff. See a couple of our second-tier teams. Vanderbilt's also in the top 20. They're one of those teams that is often in the top 25, but maybe not the best team, and they don't make the playoffs that regularly. So interesting. And then we've got Arkansas as the number 1 team out of our Big Ten conference, which I think was our kind of like lowest level conference. Yeah, this has the Kentuckys and all that kind of stuff. So that'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out at the end there. I want to kind of look at the other conferences because I think we have it set up. Let's look at the conference names. I think we have it set up here. So where we're gonna get at least one Pac-12 team. We're gonna get at least one. We put them in the ACC team. Those are our top 2 conferences. Then the then the SEC should be our third tier, which isn't actually performing as the third tier conference, but they should get a team in from there. Our Big 12 is going to have a couple teams in there with the way that conference is set up. Big 10 should be competing. So that's 5th right now as far as rankings. Big 10. Mountain West, not great. A bunch of teams beating up on each other. Conference USA didn't really change too much. The American. So North Texas is going to be competing for the top there with the Big 10 teams. So it's going to kind of come down to like Arkansas, Kentucky, North Texas, maybe James Madison, maybe Miami or Buffalo there. So it's going to come down to those teams at the end of the top 25 to get that final automatic qualifier, which is kind of what we were looking for. Bottom tier teams getting that last automatic qualifier by virtue of they're just being a bunch of good teams in the top conferences. But let's look at the conference championship games and see what happens. 2-10 in our first year at Wisconsin. We'll see if we make it to another year. So we do have some changes at the top. So Missouri and BYU are in our ACC championship game. We had Louisville as the number 2 team in the country. Looks like they might have lost a couple times. We'll see if they fell out of the playoffs. North Texas and Tulane are, as we expected, are in the American Championship game, probably fighting for that 5th spot with Arkansas, depending on how they turn out in that game. UNLV did end up dropping a couple games, but they stay in the top 10. West Virginia's up there. It's interesting to see maybe what happened with Memphis, but we have 2 teams potentially in the playoffs from there. 1 versus 2 in our Pac-12 championship game, not too surprising. So we have essentially 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those should be our, as long as Arkansas wins, those are our 5 automatic qualifiers there. The SEC started to drop off at the end. South Carolina was number 12. They lost, I think, 2 more games since the last time we looked at them, which made sense. They had some kind of old SEC rivalries that they played in their non-conference. We'll see if that kind of tails off towards the end of the sim, but these are our 5 conference champions. Basically, as long as Arkansas doesn't, if Arkansas loses, that breaks everything wide open. But as far as it is now, we have our ranked conference champions. Now, Georgia was not a conference championship game. Oklahoma wasn't. Florida wasn't. Texas Tech wasn't. All of those are Pac-12 top-level teams. Louisville was number 2. They lost a couple games, but they will still be in the playoffs. Michigan is another Pac-12 team. So if BYU loses, so I think the loser of this game, BYU and it's UNLV and West Virginia. UNLV and West Virginia, the loser of that will be out. BYU is playing Missouri. If BYU loses, they're probably out because we got at least 2 teams to jump from below. Memphis did end up losing their way down. That last game there lost them out of the playoff, which is unfortunate. Boise State couldn't get back up into that conference championship game. So we'll see what actually happens with the bracket, but we are going to have some changes at the end here, and we're going to have a bunch of Pac-12 teams in the playoff. Mateer wins the Heisman, rinse and repeat. Only 23 touchdowns on a little over 3,000 yards. He still wins the Heisman. It is just inevitable at this point with this game that John Mateer is going to win the Heisman in the first year. But what does our bracket actually look like? So Miami ended up winning the Pac-12 championship game. They are one of the 3 Pac-12 teams with a bye in the first round. Interestingly, though, Miami doesn't get the Orange Bowl in the first round, which they almost always do. Missouri is the only non-Pac-12 team that gets in. They're out of the ACC, which is their second-tier conference. So, who was it? Arkansas did end up losing. So, Southern Miss, an unranked team, ends up getting in out of the Sun Belt, which kind of changes things tremendously. So, we have 3 traditional G5 teams in Southern Miss, UNLV, and North Texas, all teams on the road. Oklahoma will host Southern Miss in the first round. Winner will take on Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Louisville, who is one of our teams from the ACC, will host UNLV, who's the winner out of the Big 12, which is kind of like our mid-tier, lower-end good teams from the power conferences and higher-end G5 teams. UNLV ended up winning that. They'll take on Louisville with the winner taking on Miami. North Texas gets the win in the American. They will take on Florida out of the Pac-12, which is interesting to see that Florida has really turned up in the new roster update, which doesn't really make sense, but they have been a top 10 team consistently since the new roster update. Then we get an all Pac-12 matchup between Texas Tech and Michigan, with the winner taking on the only non-Pac-12 team in the quarterfinal. So we could very well see an all Pac-12 semifinal with the way things are setting up, unless we get some upsets here or in the second round. Oh, and just to count, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams out of the Pac-12 in the playoff. There's only one non-conference champion that's not from the Pac-12 that made it in, and that's Louisville out of our ACC conference. Otherwise, we've got 2 from the ACC with Missouri. We've got the Big 12 with UNLV. We've got the Sun Belt with Southern Miss and the American with North Texas. Everything else is from the Pac-12. And of course, the Pac-12 champion gets the number 1 overall seed. And it's chalk in the first round. This might be the unfortunate consequence of this, is that even though we get new teams in the playoff, they might not be able to perform well. Southern Miss, who we've seen in the playoff before, but not very commonly, loses by 12 to Oklahoma. Probably puts up the best fight of any of the teams to be expected there. Oklahoma gets takes on Georgia in the second round. UNLV gets absolutely smashed by Louisville. Louisville might be able to actually do it with this one. They get a 24-point win in the first round. They'll take on Miami in the Rose Bowl in the second round. North Texas couldn't quite take care of business against Florida. They lose by 7. Florida will take on Alabama in the Cotton Bowl, and then Michigan gets the only upset, but it was a Pac-12 on Pac-12 game, so how much of an upset is it? Michigan will take on Missouri in the Orange Bowl. Somewhat as expected, we get 6 Pac-12 teams into the quarterfinal, and then the other 2 teams are from the ACC, which is our second-tier conferences. So maybe that's how this experiment works out, where we're just going to get the top-level teams. We get some appearances by lower-level teams, but we're just going to get the top-level teams actually moving on in the playoff. We at least don't get an all-Pac-12 semifinal because Missouri does get the 1-point win over Michigan in the 2 versus 10 matchup in the Orange Bowl. Looks like they went for 2 at the end of the game to actually get the win there. That is ballsy. We've got Missouri moving on. They will face off against Florida, who gets the 11-point win over Alabama. 2 versus 6 in the Fiesta Bowl, and then we get an all Pac-12, 1 versus 4 up top. Louisville couldn't keep the run going. They lose by 14 to Miami. Miami will take on Georgia in the Peach Bowl. So Miami might not get a home game at all this time, when you usually see Miami get a home game twice in the first 2 if they can't pull off the win over Georgia, who's essentially getting the home game in the Peach Bowl. But 3 Pac-12 teams, 1 ACC team in our semifinal. But it's all Pac-12 in the national championship. World's largest cocktail party is what we get in Florida versus Georgia. I think they call it something different in this game, which I don't know what they call it, but it's world's largest cocktail party. I'm pretty sure is the official, well, it's no longer the official name, but probably what the original name is between those 2 teams. Georgia gets the win 34-21 in the home game, like I talked about in the Peach Bowl. Florida gets past Missouri 19-14, 6 points in the fourth quarter, probably 2 field goals, right? Yeah, maybe they went for 2. Yeah, they must have gone for 2 to try to get it to 21-14. Either way, they still get the win, 19-14. It's Florida, Georgia, in Miami for the first national championship, and the Pac-12 will either way get the first national championship to start the video. Florida gets the win in the national championship, 26-24 over Georgia. Georgia tries to make a comeback in the, really looks like the second half. They went in down 23-7 in the second half. They fight their way back. Florida only scores 3 points in the second half. They still hold Georgia off. It's enough to win 26-24. They get the first national championship and take the lead as best team in the video. Of course, the Pac-12 is the best conference in the video to start. A much better start, 6-3 to start the season for Wisconsin this year. And we have some changes at the top. Texas, who was kind of around the outside, is in the top 5 this year. We've got Mississippi State in the top 5 out of the SEC, who missed out last year. South Carolina is also in the top 10. Washington's in the top 10 out of the ACC, who was our second best conference last year. Georgia, who was our runner-up last year, is back in the number 1 spot. Michigan made the playoff, got a first-round upset. They're back in the top 5. LSU, who we haven't seen yet, is up there. Boise State, who we haven't seen yet, is leading the Big 12 this season. Missouri, who was our semifinalist, our lone semifinalist from outside the Pac-12, is in the top 10 again. Oklahoma had our Heisman Trophy winner, of course, last season with John Mateer. They're in the top 10, and Baylor is in the top 12. We also got a couple new teams from the Pac-12 up here with Notre Dame and Oregon. Louisville, who was the number 8 seed last year, struggling a little bit, but they're up there. Rutgers has made a move up at the top of the Big Ten, who the Big Ten missed out last season by virtue of Arkansas kind of losing towards the end of the season, making room for the Sun Belt and the American to get in. Looks like Arkansas is back up there. We could see a rematch of this game that we just had between Rutgers and Arkansas in the Big Ten championship game, depending on how things go for the rest of the season. But yeah, a lot of changes at the top here, which is good to see. South Carolina and Mississippi State, let's see if they can keep it going. They're both in the top 10. It looks like Mississippi State had a loss to Arizona earlier on in the season. We don't see them playing in the regular season this year, so we'll see if they face off in the conference championship game, which, let's go to the conference championship games. 8-4 for Wisconsin this year. No conference championship game, but a massive bounce back from the 2-10 season last year, and we do have some interesting things going on here. 1 versus 2 in the Pac-12 championship game yet again this season. This time it's Texas and LSU. Boise State looks like they have a spot, win, lose, or draw with the number 7 team in the country. We did get South Carolina and Mississippi State staying up towards the top 9 and 12. Washington looks like they're going to be the lone ACC team in unless somebody we don't see missed the conference championship game. Louisville, unfortunately, will not make it back this season, but Washington should be in there. Rutgers is in the running. Okay, so count them out. Again, assuming that the top team wins, 1, this would be 2, 3, 4. Tulane should be the 5th team in. Could very well be Rutgers. If both Tulane and Rutgers lose, it could be Hawaii. And then we look at Louisiana Tech or Akron. Hawaii would be an interesting team. Rutgers would be a very interesting team. But we'll have to see some losses for that to happen. Boise State could potentially lose. Washington could potentially lose and really shake things up quite a bit. So let's just see what the bracket ends up looking like. But actually, first, let's take a look at the top 25 and see what we're missing. Probably all Pac-12 teams. So yeah, Pac-12, SEC. So SEC is going to get potentially 3 teams in, probably 2, but potentially 3 teams in. Pitt is going to get in out of the ACC, so that was one of the ACC teams that were missing, and Michigan should get back in. Oh, and we got another ACC team, so maybe 3 ACC teams, right? Baylor, Pitt, and Washington should get in there. Mississippi State will lose out unless they win against South Carolina. Who did they lose to at the end of the season? Lost the Egg Bowl. Lost the Egg Bowl by 3, which could potentially knock them out of the playoff. They would have been in regardless with that win there. Arkansas is kind of sitting on the outside there. Maybe they find a way to jump up if both of these teams lose. But I think there's going to be too many teams that come out from below, so we're not going to get Arkansas in this year. But let's see what the bracket actually looks like. Oh, what the hell? I got fired after going 8-4 in the second season. We improved by 6 wins and get fired in the second season? That's bullshit. All right, whatever. Aaron Anderson, a wide receiver from Mississippi State, wins the Heisman. 122 catches, almost 1,600 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Out of Mississippi State, who very well may have missed the playoff depending on what actually happened there. So that's an interesting thing to come across. Arkansas and Wisconsin in the Music City Bowl. Arkansas didn't make the playoff, but they got to number 14. Who cares? We got fired. What do we have available to us here? All upgrades. We're going to Iowa. We're staying in the Midwest. We're going to Iowa. That's a good fit for Luke Fickell. They apparently fired Kirk Ferentz, so we're taking that job. All right, what does our bracket look like? So again, we have 3 Pac-12 teams, just like last year, in the bye spots, and 1 ACC team. This year's ACC team is Washington. We've got Tulane, who makes it in, so not too much chaos happened. I think all of our teams that we expected to win won. So not too much chaos ended up happening at the end there. There is something I'm trying to figure out here. Okay, so Auburn and Tulane in the first round. Tulane won the American. Auburn is out of the SEC, I believe. We'll have to double check that. But they're out of the SEC, I think, with the conference realignment. Winner takes on Notre Dame in the second round. We've got Mississippi State, who won the SEC, taking on Pitt out of the ACC, with the winner taking on Texas. LSU, who lost the Pac-12 championship game to Texas, who is our 13-0 number 1 seed, will take on Baylor out of the ACC, with the winner taking on Washington in the second round. Could get an ACC on ACC matchup. And then Michigan is the number 10 seed. Again, last year they got the upset over Texas Tech. This year they'll face off against Boise State, who is our Big 12 champion, and the winner will take on Georgia, our national runner-up last year. Florida is not in, so we do have a run for the best team. Whoever wins this one will be at least tied with Florida for best team, if not above them. But I want to see what happened in these conference championship games, because it didn't look exactly as I expected, and I can't exactly figure out what happened. So South Carolina ended up dropping out with a loss to Mississippi State, which is why we see kind of the chaos that not necessarily chaos, but why it's a little bit unexpected there. Boise State got the big win there, and Tulane got the big win as well. It would have ended up being Hawaii had one of these 2 teams lost, because Rutgers ended up losing by 7 to Georgia Tech in their championship game. So back to the bracket. I believe that we have less Pac-12 teams than last year. So Notre Dame, Texas, Georgia, Michigan, LSU. 5 Pac-12 teams as opposed to our 7 from last year. We get the American back in with Tulane. We have the SEC with Mississippi State and Auburn. I'm going to double check on Auburn. So two from the ACC with 3 from the ACC with Washington, Baylor, and Pitt. And then we have the Big 12 back in for the second season. Last year it was UNLV. This year it's Boise State hosting out of the Big 12. Let me just double check on Auburn real quick. I think that they're from the SEC. Yes, Auburn is from the SEC. So 2 teams from the SEC this year after they missed out completely last year. Let's see what happens in the first round. Tulane with the upset over Auburn by 6. They will take on Notre Dame in the second round. Mississippi State does end up getting the win over Pitt, which actually is, if you watch things a lot, an upset for Mississippi State there, even though they were the home team. They win by 2. They get the prize of taking on Texas in the Peach Bowl in the next round. Texas is undefeated currently. Baylor couldn't quite hold out against LSU. They end up losing by 1. Yeah, I think that they just... What happened there? Did they go for 2 in the end? Or they must have gone for 2 in the end to go for the win. They end up losing the game on that decision. LSU moves on. They'll take on Washington in a Purple Bowl in the Orange Bowl, and Michigan gets another win in the first round. They dominate Boise State. The Big 12 has gotten dominated 2 years in a row in the first round. UNLV lost by like 24 last year, Boise State by 26 this year. So we have all 5 of the the Pac-12 teams moving on to the quarterfinal. We've got 1 all Pac-12 matchup. Then we have 3 competitors. So we're at least going to get 1 Pac-12 team in the semifinal, but we could have a chance of having up to 4 in the semifinal, or we could get an upset by either Washington, not necessarily upset for Washington, but a win by Washington, an upset by Mississippi State, or an upset by Tulane to stop the all-4 Pac-12 semifinal. The unlikely hero, Tulane, gets the win over Notre Dame by 8. They are the lone non-Pac-12 team to get through to the semifinal. They get the prize of taking on Texas in the Rose Bowl, who's currently 14-0, and got a 24-point win over Mississippi State in the second round. But still, Tulane is the lone team with a chance to stop the Pac-12 in this season. They've got 2 upset wins to start. Can they get a third one against Texas? LSU takes down Washington in the Orange Bowl by 7. They will face off against Georgia, who crushed Michigan. They could be on their way to their second straight national championship game appearance if they can win the Sugar Bowl over LSU, which is essentially a home game for LSU. So it's LSU, Georgia, 2 versus 6 in the Sugar Bowl, 1 versus 13 in the Rose Bowl with Texas and Tulane. It's all from the South. We could get an all SEC or an all Louisiana matchup between Tulane and LSU, or an all Pac-12 matchup if Tulane just doesn't win. So we'll see if Tulane can get some kind of upset here and stop the Pac-12 dominance. Stonewalled. Tulane goes down 56-14 against Texas. An absolute dominant run by Texas, holding Tulane to 0 points in the second half. 28-14 at halftime. You have a chance, but absolutely stopped in the second half. 56-14, Texas moves on. They will face off against LSU, who gets the win 35-23. Really 2 bad games, it looks like, in the semifinal. LSU basically had it going into the fourth quarter. They were up double digits the entire fourth quarter there. So LSU and Texas, again, a double Pac-12 matchup in Vegas this time. Tulane had a valiant run. We've at least not had an all Pac-12 semifinal so far, but still yet to have anybody else in the national championship game in this sim. LSU ends up getting the win in the national championship game. So one thing is that we now have 2 national champions that have only made the playoffs once. So it's wide open in the final season to see if anybody could take that. So far, Georgia and Michigan are the only teams that made it in back-to-back playoffs to start, which that's pretty interesting. That's a pretty interesting change that I didn't even pick up. Georgia and Michigan are the only 2 that have made it into back-to-back. So they would both have the inside track on getting best team in the video if they can win in the final season. But then there's also, some teams that could repeat this next season. We'll see how it ends up turning out. LSU gets the win. They basically had it in the third quarter there, hold them off at the end. Florida, LSU are our first 2 national champions. They would tie for best team so far. It's all open, aside from best conference in the final season of the video. But can we see somebody get to the national championship game, at least, that's not from the Pac-12? Georgia seems determined to get the best team in the video, but we have a couple other teams up there, with Texas being our runner-up from last year and Florida being our first national champion in the top 5. We have Washington back in the top 5 after losing in the first game that they had in the playoff last year. They did get a first-round bye. SMU, who was in the first year playoff, are back in the top 5 this year. Michigan, our other team that has made it to 3 straight playoffs, aside from Georgia, is in the top 6, but they have 3 losses already, so they might be on their way out. North Carolina is up here out of the SEC for the first time. Baylor's back up here. Auburn's back up here. Boston College is up here for the first time out of the SEC. Ohio State, who was our number 1 team in our first CFP poll, hasn't been back since, but they're in the top 12 this time. Nobody really that new. Duke, I guess, is a little bit new. Really, a lot of the teams that we've already had up here. It's going to be interesting to see this year what actually turns out, if we can get somebody from outside of the Pac-12. Looks like we have some familiar faces, but things are going to change at the end. Let's just go to the conference championship games and see what's going on. We got Iowa into the top 25 in our first season at the school. Shouldn't have got fired by Wisconsin last year. So 1 versus 3 for the first time in our Pac-12 championship game. The 2 must be a Pac-12 team because they're not in any other conference championship games. But Florida looks like they're going to get back in after missing out last season, winning the national championship, of course, in the first season. Boise State's looking to get back in there, number 7 going into their conference championship game. Buffalo has an outside shot here. North Texas should be back in this season after missing out last year, being in the first year. Of course, Tulane was the team that made a run for us last year outside of the Pac-12. North Carolina should be in this year. Auburn probably is not going to be in. Syracuse. Okay, so Washington's going to be in. Washington's our number 2 team. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, assuming all of the top teams win. If, for whatever reason, UTSA wins or Duke wins, maybe you could see... It have to be UTSA and West Virginia winning. Then you could see Buffalo or Syracuse being the 6 and 7 teams. Other than that, I think that we are pretty well set with conference champions. Let's take a look at what the CFP can tell us that we missed out on there. So Clemson for the first time should be in. Ohio State for the first time should be in. Texas should be back in after being last year's runner-up. Baylor and Mississippi State look like they'll be back in, assuming that all of the top teams win. If, for whatever reason, we get an upset specifically from one of these 2 teams, which would keep the top team in, Georgia will miss out after making the first 2 college football playoffs and miss out on their chance of getting best team in the video. So let's see what actually happens when we look at the bracket. Georgia's making a case. Landon Rolden, our second wide receiver Heisman of the video. Last year it was from Mississippi State. This year from Georgia. 121 catches, 1,900 yards, 19 touchdowns, an even better season than we had last year from our Heisman. This year we're back in the Music City Bowl, this time with Iowa, taking on Rutgers this year. What does our bracket end up looking like? Does Georgia make it in? Georgia does not make it in. Duke gets the upset in the ACC championship game over Washington, knocking Georgia out. Georgia will not be best team in the video. They had the inside track on that. Michigan, our other team that had made 2 straight CFPs to start the season, or start the video, are out. So before we start talking about all the teams that are in, Auburn also made it in too. Florida is in the driver's seat. If they win a national championship, they will be best team in the video. Texas also has a good claim to that. Washington could do it. Auburn could do it. Boise State could do it. And Baylor could do it, because those are all the teams that have made it 2 times. We have no 3-time college football playoff participants. Florida, of course, if they win it, gets 2 national championships. They get the win. But let's go through who actually makes it. Duke gets the upset in the ACC championship game over Washington. They get in as the 12 seed. They will take on Boise State, who won their Big 12 championship game. They get in as the 5 seed. The winner takes on North Carolina. So at the very least, we will have one Pac-12 team, one non-Pac-12 team in the semifinal. With the way that all boils out, we could get the Tobacco Road rivalry in the quarterfinal there. North Texas gets to host Texas in the first round. They're in for the second time. So technically, North Texas could get best team in the video. Winner of that goes on to face Florida. So we should get that pretty well figured out by the time we get to the semifinal, whether it's going to be Florida or Texas that gets a shot, or even North Texas, because all those teams do have a shot there. Auburn is in for their second time as well. They get an upset in the SEC championship game. Who did they beat? They're the only SEC team that make it in. They beat... We'll have to double check that. They knocked out Mississippi State. There's a lot of changes that happened there with the upsets that happened at the end. Auburn will take on Ohio State, who's in for the first time. Winner will take on Oklahoma, who's in for the first time. They did have a Heisman Trophy winner at the beginning, but only one-time playoff participant doesn't necessarily mean that you would get best team in the video with a win. Baylor and Washington face off. ACC, SEC matchup. No, double ACC matchup, I should say, with a winner taking on Clemson out of the Pac-12. So who was the SEC conference champion runner-up that lost their spot? I can't remember who that was. Oh, North Carolina was the one that lost, so that Mississippi State lost their spot because Auburn and Duke both jumped up. They would have been in for their second time and would have had a chance at best team in the video. So for this time, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, 5 teams from the Pac-12. We had 7 the first season, but 5 in the last 2. The ACC might have their most this year with Duke, Baylor, and Washington all making it. The SEC gets 2 with Auburn and North Carolina. The American is in for the 3rd straight season, and the Big 12 is in for the 3rd straight season. So we've pretty much, the American and the Big 12 have had a spot. Both Boise State and North Texas have made it twice. Tulane and UNLV made it the other 2 times. This is the most for the ACC and tied for the most for the SEC in this final season. So we did get some good turnover in the playoff. And Duke couldn't get it done on the blue turf, so Boise State gets the win, our only G5, classic G5 win of the video. We did get some good games here. So North Texas ends up losing by a lot. Texas and Florida is really the matchup that we need to see here, as Texas was our runner-up last year. So those are really the 2 teams that are looking for best team in the video. But North Carolina and Boise State will face the winner of Texas. The winner of that game will face the winner of Texas and Florida in the second round. That'll be an interesting one. Auburn gets an upset win over Ohio State, and Baylor gets the upset win over Washington. So we are guaranteed to have only one Pac-12 team in the quarterfinal. We will at the most have 3, but Auburn and Baylor are both 2-time college football playoff participants facing off against 1-time college football playoff participants out of the Pac-12. Can we see some upsets? Oklahoma, we know historically, has had trouble in the Fiesta Bowl, and Baylor could get an upset over Clemson. I don't know about anything with Clemson and the Peach Bowl, but let's see if we can get the flip of what we had. We've gone 3 from the Pac-12 in each of them. Maybe we can get 3 from the not Pac-12 in the semifinal. The boy can dream, but it doesn't always come true. North Carolina does get the win over Boise State, so they will be our lone non-Pac-12 team. They will face off against Florida, who's looking to get their 2nd national championship after beating Texas, last year's runner-up, in the Rose Bowl. So it's Florida, North Carolina in the Orange Bowl. Basically chalk. 2 versus 3 in the Cotton Bowl. Oklahoma gets the big win over Auburn by 21 and by 2 touchdowns for Clemson over Baylor. So it's Oklahoma, Clemson in the Cotton Bowl, 2 versus 3, 1 versus 4, Florida and North Carolina in the Orange Bowl. Absolute blowout win for Florida. They will take on Oklahoma. This is the 2007 national championship. I always forget which one this is. 2007, 2008. Florida versus Oklahoma. Both blowout wins in the semifinal. 55-14 for Florida. 52-24 for Clemson. Pac-12, all 6 participants in the national championship game were from the Pac-12. 9 of 12 participants in the semifinal were from the Pac-12. I have to say, we have to figure out how to make things change a little bit in the playoffs so we can get new teams in the national championship game, but we have figured out the formula to get new teams in the playoff, and I would say that this was pretty successful in actually getting them to advance as well. The first season, we had Missouri in the semifinal, not a super common team in the semifinal, more so since the roster update, but still not super common in the semifinal. In the second year, we had Tulane making a run from outside of the top 12. They were number 13. They make a run all the way to the semifinal. Not a super common team in the semifinal. Maybe common for the playoffs, but not super for the semifinal. And North Carolina, a team that we have very rarely seen. They went all the way down to the SEC, which was our 3rd conference. Really, I think it was supposed to be our 4th conference. No, it was our 3rd conference down. North Carolina makes it to the semifinal in the final season from a top 4 seed. None of them could do anything in the semifinal. They all got killed, but still 3 unlikely teams into the semifinal. Let's see if Florida gets best team in the video. I think they actually have locked it up. Yeah, they've locked it up because they're the only 2-time participant national champion at this point. Oklahoma was only 1 time. So even if Oklahoma wins, they wouldn't get best. But Florida could win 2 here in the final season. Oklahoma does end up getting the win in the national championship game, actually in overtime. They score a touchdown in overtime, stop Florida. They win 42-35, getting their first national championship of the video. It goes Florida, LSU, Oklahoma as our 3 national champions, all from the Pac-12. Florida still locked down best team in the video as they made 2 national championships. Nobody else did that, and nobody else made 2 playoffs and won a national championship, as both Oklahoma and LSU were only one-time participants. So Florida gets best team in the video. We're going to try to figure out how to fix the playoffs a little bit so we can get new teams up there, but that's going to have to take some tinkering to see how we can exactly do that. But make sure that you are tuned in for the video tomorrow about the NIT. I have the original NIT video over there. Oh my God, it's really hard. Over there, up in the top there. So make sure you check that one out if you're interested in how the tournament was all set up. We'll have the sim for that tomorrow. We're going to do more of those tournament sims. We're going to do some rebuilds, some different things in the next month as we start to really expand this channel into new types of videos. Thanks for being a part of this channel so far. Help us get to 500 subscribers before the end of the month and 1,000 before March so we can get monetized and really crank out the videos on this channel. Other than that, we will see you tomorrow.